Hey you guys, it's Haley here, and today I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about money. So, one of the biggest questions I get asked, and I'm sure that you are all wondering, is how to charge for your work. And so we're going to be talking about that today, but we're also going to be talking about budgeting, right? Because it doesn't really matter how much money you're making if you don't know how to manage it properly. It's never going to be enough, right? And so in this video, we're going to be doing a few things. The first off is we're going to actually be going over how to budget for your business, because knowing how to budget for your business is actually going to help you understand what your expenses are and what you need to be making, which can then influence the way that you're pricing your work, which is really important. So we're going to go over budgeting for your business, we're going to go over budgeting in your personal expenses, and then based on all of that, we're going to talk about how to then price your work and how to know what to charge for things and sort of how to plan. So that's what we're going to be going over today. Before we get started, just a couple points I wanted to go over in regards to budgeting. So the first one is this: you are not your business, okay? I'm gonna say that one more time. You are not your business. And this is a really important point that you need to get drilled into your head if you are going to be successful at managing your money and at making your money as a freelance artist. So I want you to imagine this. You are a cashier at Target and you want to buy some new shoes, right? Can you just reach into the cash register at Target and take whatever money you want and go buy shoes? Like, no, of course not. Target would fire your butt so fast. Same thing though, if Target wants to do a new ad campaign, they can't just come to you and say, hey, we want to do this new ad campaign and we're just gonna take some money out of your personal bank account to help with that. No, just because you're an employee doesn't mean they have any right to any of your personal money, okay? So you need to think about your business and your personal budgeting and bank account the same way, right? You are not your business. You need to keep your business and your personal finances separate. Your business should not be buying those new shoes that you want to get, right? That is not money that should be coming from your business. Same thing though, expenses for your business should be coming from your business. You cannot just be pulling money from your business to do whatever you want. So we're going to be talking more about that, but I think that's just a really important point to get across right now, that if you do not have separate bank accounts right now for your freelance business and for your personal one, you need to do that very first before you start doing anything else, because it's so important. And as freelancers, it can be confusing because lots of times, we are the individual, we don't have employees. It can seem like, well, yeah, I am my business, but you are not. They are separate. The next thing I need to tell you in regards to budgeting is that a number isn't going to tell you anything unless it has meaning. So tell me this: how many times have you guys opened your checking account or something and you see that you've got like $1,000, let's say, and you go, oh, awesome, I can totally go, do this fun thing with my friends that costs $60. Like, I'm fine, I've got $1,000, okay? That $1,000 isn't just $1,000, right? When you really think about it, maybe 600 of that is going to rent or should be going to rent. Some of that should be going to pay your insurance. Some of that should be going to pay your phone bill, right? And when you actually do the math, you might not actually have $50 there to go to Lagoon with your friends or whatever, okay? And so I think it's really important as we get into this to understand that just knowing how much money is in your bank account is not budgeting, okay? You need to know how much money is in your bank account, but also what that money is there for in order to be successful and to have more control over your life, right? And the last thing I wanted to talk about is this whole idea that you have enough, right? And that can seem weird, but one really important thing as you get into budgeting is to understand that you do have enough, okay? And it's all about how you're using your resources and how you are managing your money and your self-discipline. So I had a friend in college. This was right after I graduated high school. I had moved out and I was living with my friend. And this was really interesting because we lived in the same apartment. We had the exact same rent. We had very similar expenses, things month to month, but we also had the exact same job. And so I knew exactly what my friend was making because we made the same amount and we had the exact same expenses, like rent, gas, pretty much it was the same across the board. But here's the difference. I was doing fine. I was doing just great and I never really was worried about money, and I was even adding to savings quite a bit every month, whereas my friend was struggling. Every month when it was time to pay rent, she was freaking out trying to figure out how to do it, or like lots of times she didn't have any money for gas or for food or whatever and would like ask her parents for money, okay? We had the exact same income and the exact same expenses, but the only difference was I was budgeting, was using my money properly and, knew where it was going, and she didn't. And the consequences of that is that she was always stressed out. She never felt like she had enough. Whereas I knew that I had enough because I was managing it, okay? Whether you make minimum wage or you make a ton of money, you have enough. But it's all about if you're using it wisely and living within your means. And you can always live within your means, and you don't need that much to be happy, but you do need to know how to manage it, okay? So with that being said, we're going to get into how to budget for your business.
Okay, let's get to it. We're going to start out by talking about our business bank account. So the very first thing we want to talk about is taxes. And this might not sound like fun, but it's super duper important to talk about. And it's the very first thing we need to bring up when we talk about budgeting for your business. Every time you get paid for a project, 25% of that needs to go to a separate account for taxes. Okay, that is how much you should be putting aside every single time you get paid. Federal taxes usually end up being about 20% of your total income, and state taxes usually end up being about 5%. So every time you get paid, that money should automatically go over. So let's say you did a logo project for $1,000. Guess what? Right off the bat, 250 of that need to go to a separate safe place for taxes, which you can either pay quarterly or annually. The thing that's important is that they are there. There's nothing worse than having time to pay taxes and realizing what you owe and being like, oh shoot, I don't have that. If you're planning ahead and you're putting that money away in taxes, then it's no big deal. And you might even end up getting to keep some of it depending on how smart you are with managing your expenses, which we'll talk about in a second. For me, I keep that money in a separate savings account connected with my business bank account. That way, I'm not looking at it. I'm not even tempted to spend it. Then, with the rest of your money, what you're going to do is you're going to budget it out in your business checking account. So, here's an example of kind of what my business checking account looks like. So, it's one account, right? The total in that account is whatever this number is, right? In total. But I've split that account out in a spreadsheet. I just do my spreadsheet in a notebook, actually, like not actually on a computer, but you can do whatever you want, into separate bank accounts so that I know where the money in my checking account needs to go. So with my budget, I have the date, right, telling me what day something happened, the transaction, whether it's something that I'm getting paid for or something that I'm buying, and then I have the total, and then I have wages, education, supplies, and other. So explaining how this works. So let's say I get paid for a sign, and I get paid $600, right? This $600 is after taxes. So it would have been what, like 25% more than whatever that is. But this is what's left. So you take the money from taxes, move it, don't even think about it. From what's left, I get $600, right? Then I take 75% of that, and that goes to my wages. So the wages are the money that I pay myself. So remember how I said that you are not your business? Well, just like you are not your business, you should be paying yourself from your business consistently. You can do that either once a week or every 2 weeks, which is what I do. I pay myself every 2 weeks, but you need to be paying yourself a certain particular amount from your business. So that goes into a wages account. Next, I take 5% of whatever it is and I put it towards an education account. And what that is it's money that I can use to continue to learn and better my skills. So if there's a workshop I want to take, if there's a book I want to order, I put it into an education fund. Next is a supply fund. I also put 5% in there. That's money that I can use for paint, for paper, for, whatever, just any supplies that you need for your business. And then I have an other account that I put 15% into. This is money that goes towards everything else. So this could be my Adobe Creative Cloud subscription. This could be getting my new website at the end of the year, like repaying for my domain. It's whatever, right? And for me, this works. In your business, you need to set up sections that have to do with your business. So for instance, if you make most of your money by creating and selling product, you're probably gonna need more money in your supplies since you do have more of an upfront cost, right, to manufacture that product. Whereas for me, I don't really have anything like that. If you rent a space, right, you're going to need to have a section for rent so that you can make sure that you are planning for that. But it's really important to budget out. So again, you know where your money is going and you know that you have money for certain things. So that's what happens when I get paid. Anytime I get an expense, so for instance, maybe I had to buy paint for a mural from Lowe's, right? I'm going to write down what it is. I'm going to write down where it came from usually, and then I'm going to, subtract it from my total, and then I'll take it from whatever topic makes the most sense. So in this case, it would come from supplies, right? Where in this case, like my Adobe Creative Cloud, that comes from other. And so what this is doing is it's helping me have a very, very clear idea of what is in my account and what I can afford, right? So that if something comes around and I say, oh my gosh, I would really love to, buy a new iPad, I can look. And if I have enough money over here to buy a new iPad, then by all means, buy a new iPad. So now let's talk about paying yourself. And this is actually going to do a lot with our personal funds, how much we're going to pay ourselves. So we're going to put our business on hold for 2 seconds, and now we're going to move over and talk about personal budgeting. And the thing that's important to understand is now when we switch over to our personal budget, it's going to be set up in a very similar way. For your personal account, you should have a checkings account and a savings account, right? And again, each of those, when you just look at the account, it's going to only show you the total. So what you want to do is create a spreadsheet or create, a grid like this in a notebook, which is what I do, where you can plan out and manage those things. So let's talk about your personal savings. So in this case, let's use an example of a girl named Nicole. So Nicole is, let's see, not now, I don't want to update. Nicole, let's say she's 21 years old, she lives in Provo, Utah, and she is a UVU student. And we're going to do this to just keep it simple, right? She doesn't have that many expenses, she doesn't have kids, she's not married, right? Let's keep it pretty simple. So let's say that Nicole has to pay $500 a month in rent, okay? She has to pay $100 a month for her phone. And again, we're keeping these numbers really simple just to make it easy. Let's say her car insurance every month is $100, and every year her tuition for school ends up being about $6,000, about $3,000 a semester. And she also likes to watch Netflix, so she has a Netflix account that is $10 a month. All of these numbers right here are what we call set expenses. They're the things that are the same every single month. They don't vary, right? They're the things that are consistent. And so because of that, it's really important to plan for them. So let's say that Nicole has a freelance business where she pays herself every 2 weeks, just kind of like you would with a normal job, right? You get paid every other Friday or something. So we know that in the total of the month, she needs to have $500 for rent, which means that every 2 weeks, she needs to be adding $250 to her budget so that by the end of the month, she'll have $500. Make sense? Same thing with phone. She needs to be adding $50 a month or $50 every 2 weeks to her fund for her phone so that at the end of the month, she'll have $100. Car insurance, same thing. Netflix, same thing, right? $5 a month. Tuition is just a little bit trickier. She knows that in a year, she needs to have $6,000 about for tuition. So let's take a look at that. If we take that tuition and we divide it by 52, right? 52 weeks in a year, would find that she needs to be paying or saving about $115 a week, right, for her tuition. And so if we know we're paying ourselves every 2 weeks, not every week, she needs to be saving $230 every 2 weeks so that she can pay for tuition. This is how I did it in school, guys, and this is the way that you want to go, because anything you can do to keep yourself out of debt is a good thing. It's super easy, especially if you're a student or something like that, to just say, oh, well, I can't afford school, I'll just get a huge loan and then pay for it after. That is not the way to go. If you can plan and be smart, you don't have to ever be in debt, right? I've always bought my cars with cash. I paid tuition in cash. Pretty much every big expense I've ever bought has been with cash, and it comes down to smart savings, right? This is what I did when I was in college, and I was able to pay for, tuition every semester with cash and then save during the next semester to pay for the next one, and it was great. Okay, so if we look at the total of these then, we know that her fixed expenses every 2 weeks are $585. So in order to survive and pay these basic necessities, right, she's gonna need $585 a month. But that's not all, right? We have to eat, we have to drive. So let's say that about every 2 weeks, Nicole knows she spends about $50 every 2 weeks on gas, right? And then groceries, let's say she spends about $100 every 2 weeks on groceries, right? On feeding herself. And she doesn't really eat out a lot. She likes to cook, so we don't have to worry about that, right? Groceries covers everything. So then we know that that is going to be another $150, right? To add to that other number. Now let's talk a little bit about savings. Saving is super duper important to Nicole because Nicole is smart, and not only is she saving for her school, but she's saving for her future. So let's say that Nicole just has an emergency savings account. And every month she decides she wants to add, or every 2 weeks, sorry, not every month. Let's say every 2 weeks she wants to add $100 to that savings account. And this could be for anything, right? This could be if she gets a flat tire on her car, right? This could be if she has to go to the dentist, right? But she's being smart and she's decided that she wants to put $100 every 2 weeks towards a savings account for emergencies. And she's also saving for a new laptop for school. And so she wants to set aside, let's say $50 every 2 weeks for that new laptop. So when we add that together, that's going to be, what is that? That's also $150. Woo, math. And so if we add that all together, right, now we've got $885. And to make things simple, let's also just give her a little bit of extra spending money in her checking account for if she wants to go to a movie or wants to do whatever. So let's give her $15. And again, you might say, well, $15, that's not very much, okay? But Nicole isn't just a goofball, right? She's a smart college student who wants to be in control of her life. And if that means saving more money and spending less on silly things or things that aren't super important, right, then $15 is going to be enough. The way that your budget is set up is going to depend a lot on your priorities, right? If you're somebody who just has to have the newest fashion every season, you better make sure you're budgeting for that, right? Figure out, okay, if this is something that's truly important to me, you know, budget for it. Again, a lot of these things like Netflix, she doesn't need Netflix, but maybe for Nicole, Netflix is just like, she can't go without it. She's a movie lover. She loves it, right? So based on all of this now, taking this into account, we know she needs to be making $900 every 2 weeks in order to survive and to pay for her life, right? So you want to do the exact same thing. So no matter who you are or what your expenses are, this is a super important part of figuring out how much money you need to be making in your business, right? Because how much money you need to survive or even to thrive is going to determine how much money you need to be making in your business, right? So for whoever you are, make a list of all your expenses, right? Make a list of the fixed ones, the ones that you know how much they're going to be every single month. Make a list of the ones that, you know, are kind of variable. They could change a little, but you have a decent idea of what they're going to be. And then make a list of anything else that is important to you and budget for it. This is going to be super important. Once you have all that, you're going to set up a spreadsheet just like this, right? But instead of having the sections be income, expense, total, wages, education, whatever, it would be like rent, phone, car, blah, 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 right? Do you get what I'm saying? You're going to set it up exactly the same way. And every time you buy something, you need to track it in here. That way you know, right? That way you can look and you can say, okay, last time when I went to the grocery store, I spent $45, which means this next time I go to the grocery store, I have at least $65, but I can't go over that, right? And the important thing with budgeting is you have to stick to your budget in order for it to work. So now let's go back to the business end of things and how to price your work. So knowing that Nicole needs to make $600 every 2 weeks in order to survive, let's talk about what that means for her business. So let's say Nicole is a graphic designer who's a freelancer, right? We know that her income, once we do the math, is really only 50% of what she's actually making, right? So if she charges, let's say $1,000 for a logo design, and 25% of that goes towards, taxes, 25% goes taxes, and then some of it goes towards education, supplies, and others, what is actually left for her at the income at the end is $500, which means in order for Nicole to meet her goal of $900 every 2 weeks, she should probably do 2 logo projects at $1,000 a piece every 2 weeks in order to survive. So does that make sense? So people love to talk about pricing their work, and they just always start with that. Like, well, how much should I be charging per hour? How much should I be charging for project? And I think it's really important to understand, well, what are your expenses? How much do you actually need to make? And how much, do you need to be charging for that? Does that make sense? So thinking backwards like this can be really, really important, right? So if she knows that's how much she needs to make, right? That she needs $900, then she knows 2 logo projects at $1,000 a piece are going to get her over the edge, right? And so charging is going to come down to that, right? If you're charging for these projects, like let's say you're charging $200 for a logo, which means at the end of the day, you're really only keeping 100 of that, right? You personally, you're only going to end up making 100. You are going to have to do 9 logo projects a month to meet your every 2 weeks to do your $900 goal. And 9 logo projects in 2 weeks is a lot. And that means you're charging way too low. Okay. So I think that's just important to talk about as we're going in. Again, there are certain things that are kind of set, and you should be giving yourself raises as you go. But let's talk also about paying yourself real quick. So let's say that Nicole has been doing a whole bunch of projects, and that right now in her income, or let's see, her wages section of her bank account, let's say she has $1,500, right? And it's the day that she's going to pay herself. Let's say it's the second Friday of the month and it's time to pay herself. Well, if Nicole just goes and takes this whole $1,500 and pays herself, that's great. Then she's got more than she needs. But guess what the problem is? If next week she doesn't get as many logo projects and it comes time to pay herself and she's only got $300 in her wages account, she's in big trouble, right? So what you want to do is you want to figure out exactly how much money you need to live. In this case, $900 for Nicole every 2 weeks. And you need to only pay yourself that amount. This is going to take self-control, but it's totally worth it. And this is how to be a smart freelancer, right? So if you have $1,500 in your wages account, only pay yourself 900 of that. And what that does is that's going to leave an extra $600 in your account. And that's great, because if something happens and for whatever reason the next week you don't have a lot of work, guess what? You've already got some backup money there. And that backup money is going to build up. If you're smart and doing it right, it's going to build up, it's going to grow, and that's going to be super duper helpful for you.
Hopefully you're starting to understand why budgeting is so important. And like I talked about with that income backup money, knowing exactly how much you actually need and then paying yourself that amount and leaving the rest as a cushion is super duper important, okay? When Corona started, everybody freaked out, right? Everybody didn't have work, everyone was worried, all this stuff was going on. And I just sat there and I thought, okay, if this is stressing you out right now, you should not be a freelancer, because guess what? That's freelance life all the time. This last January is really, really slow for my business usually, and I've been in business a few years, long enough to figure out Januaries are always slow, right? This last January, I think I only made $200 the entire month, right? That's horrible, but I didn't have to change my spending habits at all because I had planned for that and I had a reserve. So when it came for me to pay myself, I could still pay myself the exact amount that I needed, right, and not be stressed out. And so this is why budgeting is so important, is because it gives you control over your life, over your money, and it gives you peace of mind, okay? Just a few more examples. Like, I have a savings account for car problems, right? Because I know that cars just tend to have problems. So every time I personally get paid, I put $50 in a savings account just for car problems, right? And it's so helpful because guess what? There's been a few times where, like, something will happen with your car, or like last winter I needed new tires and it ended up being like $800 for new tires. If you're not saving and planning, $800 is like a nightmare, right? But if you've got that money just sitting there waiting for you, it's no big deal. And I was able to be like, great, I need tires, cool, go get some tires, right? It's no problem. Same thing with your own business. Right now, the way that my finances are, I could not get paid for a project for 3 months and be totally fine, because I have planned for that and I have money set aside and things are going good. So I don't know. I don't know how much you guys want to know. Again, it's tricky to know, but like I can tell you right now, as a 23-year-old girl, right, who only graduated college last April, I have $30,000 in my savings account, okay? So it's not a joke. You do not have to make a ton of money to be really smart and to save a lot and to be financially stable, okay? So I hope that was helpful for you, and I hope that kind of has helped you figure out more about pricing, right? As you're pricing your work, think backwards. Think, okay, what do I need to make? How do I need to budget? And that's going to influence the way that I'm pricing my work. One really good tip with pricing your work is if you are getting so much work that you can't handle it, that's a really good sign that you're not charging enough. You should be saying no to probably half of the projects that come in, right? Because generally a lot of the people that are approaching with projects are going to be undercutting you. And if you're saying yes to everything, that's probably not a good sign. Also give yourself raises. Like when I graduated, I gave myself a raise, right? So now I'm making about $80 an hour is what I'm charging on average. Again, don't charge per hour, charge per project. I'll talk about that just for a second, since we're on the topic. So here's the problem with charging per hour, right? Let's say you are a sign painter and you paint really good signs, but you take freaking forever to do it, right? And then you've got another sign painter who's just as good. The finished project looks just as fantastic, but they're doing it in half the time. Who do you think should get paid more? The person who can do it in half the time, right? If you are a client, you would way rather hire someone that can just like get it done and save you a headache than someone that's gonna be like a month painting one stupid sign, right? But if you're charging per hour, the person who takes forever is making more, right? And you punish yourself for being efficient. So you never ever wanna charge per hour. You wanna charge per project, right? And you need to figure that out for yourself. There's no straight answer for that, right? It's all gonna depend on you. It's gonna depend on what you're offering. And again, that's probably not what you wanted to hear, but you got to figure that out. So like for me, for a logo, $1,000 straight across, and I will give them 3 sketches, 2 rounds of revisions, final project. That's it. That's how it always is. That's standard. But for murals come in all shapes and sizes. It's a lot of different things. So with murals, I found that charging about $50 per square foot is what works best for that, plus the design fee on top of that, right? But you're gonna have to figure that out for your own business because everything is different, everything is good. There are things you can look at to say like, okay, this is the basics, this is good, but you're gonna have to figure out, again, what are your expenses? How much do you work a month, right? And how are you gonna pay for everything? Another good thing you can do is it's always fine to reach out to people, okay? If you're starting out, you can totally reach out to other artists. The question you should ask though isn't, like, for instance, if you were reaching out to me, don't say, Haley, what would you charge for this project, right? You need to say, Haley, what should I charge for this project, right? Like, Haley, as someone who's never done freelance stuff before and who's getting my first project, what should I be charging, right? Because if you go and ask someone who's been in the business a long time, they should be making more money than you if you're like, you know, if you don't have an education and you're brand new and your work is like good, but maybe not quite as good, right? But that's okay. And as you get better, you'll get better clients, you'll make more money, everything will be good. So hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully it's encouraging you to kind of start budgeting and to start figuring that out, because if you can budget, you're going to be a better freelancer, you're going to have more control over your life and your money, and you're not going to be stressed out all the time. So let me know if this is helpful. If you have questions, you can go ahead, email me anytime, typeaffiliated.com, typeaffiliated@gmail.com, all of that. But you guys are wonderful. Thanks.